My guest today is Debra Jason, and she's an author, professional speaker, direct response copywriter, and multifaceted marketing consultant. A recipient of the Rocky Mountain Direct Marketing Association's Creative Person of the Year Award and the Boulder Chamber of Commerce's Small Business of the Year Award, she started The Right, and that's WRITE, The Right Direction in 1989. Author of the award-winning book Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget, her mission is to empower you with the cost-effective business building strategies that you need to gain exposure for your business so you can attract a steady stream of happy clients while driving revenue to your bank account. Marketing and writing with heart, not hype, Debra encourages and empowers you to succeed in living your dream. She has been described as a heartwarming, enthusiastic, and energetic professional. Well, that's the kind of person we're looking for. Debra, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Gail? Thanks so much for having me as your guest.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, you said that before starting your business, you were looking for a job, a job. So what changed that resulted in you going out on your own?
Well, that's an interesting question because I always wanted my own business, but I never knew what that was going to be. And back in 1988, I was looking for a job as a copywriter, and I'm in Colorado, and at that time, Colorado was in a recession. So there I was knocking on doors and going on interviews, and everywhere I went, people said to me, "We're not hiring, we're laying people off, but if you were to start your own business as a freelancer, we could use your help." So that light bulb went off in my head. I went, yeah, I always said I wanted my own business, but I never knew what that was going to be. And I took a giant leap of faith. And on January 1st of 1989, I opened my doors as The Right Direction.
That's interesting, though. You said you didn't know what you really wanted to do, but you were a copywriter. So why would you not have thought that that would be the business that you would start?
Well, to go way back in time, I started my career. I went to graduate school for a master's in communication disorders. So originally, I was a speech pathologist. And after working that for several years and realizing it really wasn't fueling my passion, I actually took time off to figure out what do I want to be when I grow up. And I had another career before I started copywriting. So when I actually started to write, it was because I was working at a catalog company. And that was the point in time when I took that job, I thought, I'll take this job because maybe one day I'll want to start my own catalog. And then after working there for a couple of years, I was actually doing a lot of the project management and scheduling the catalog from start to finish and working with copywriters and working with designers. So that's where I started to gain my interest as a writer. And I went to my boss and said, instead of hiring a copywriter, why don't you let me try this? And if you like it, we'll save money. And if you don't, then I'll go back to just managing the project. So that's when I started writing, but I didn't really think of that as being my career in terms of going out on my own for my own business. So it really wasn't something that I thought of, when you're a kid and people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I never said I want to be a copywriter.
Well, I don't think most people do. That's not a word that comes trippingly off your tongue.
Right.
And
most
however,
people don't know what it is. But,
and being a great copywriter is so important. It's so important because the words that you write really orchestrate everything in your life, everything that you do, everything you develop, everything that you put out there. So, and it's so hard to find good copywriters. So it's wonderful that you kind of fell into it and that you did well with it. And I think it's an amazing thing that you were able to accomplish all that you did. And, this was something that you did not really think of before. But when you went into business, you went from scratch, I assume. What was that like for you?
I did start from scratch. So for people who are listening that may know about like copywriters and graphic designers, many times they've been working at an advertising agency. And so when they go out on their own, they bring clients with them. But I really didn't have that, because when I went to agencies, they were like, sorry, we'll use you as a freelancer, but we can't hire you. So I really did start from scratch, meaning I had no clients. I did not have a degree in marketing. So I knew I had to get my message out there, and I knew I had to get it out there in a big way. And I had a mortgage to pay. So it was really kind of scary for me, because I had responsibilities and commitments that I had to keep. But like I said earlier, I took a leap of faith and went, this is what I'm going to do. And here's what I'm going to do to get out there and meet people and start relationships, and did it. So here it is. God, January 1st will be 28 years that I'm in business. So it was scary for me to start from scratch. And I think many people who are solopreneurs would agree with that and say, this is something I want to do, but you sort of put the fear aside, and you are what I call consistent and persistent.
Yeah, it's interesting, because you do wonder where your first client's from, and then coming from, and then you have your second one and your third one, and then one thing starts to lead to another. But it is scary when you have to pay the light bill and the mortgage and buy food and necessities like that.
Well, and you also, you get a lot of no's.
Yeah.
So you have to, hang up that phone and take a deep breath. And you know what? To be honest, there were many days I'd be in tears, because I thought, I'm going to get that project. And then I'd get the call, and this was before we had email. So I actually got a phone call that would say, sorry, Debra, we're going to work with somebody else. And so, I was very fortunate, because I did have two wonderful mentors, and I had a great support network. So when I had those down days when I'd be in tears, I could call someone and say, I must be crazy to do this. And they go, keep going, you're doing great. So, I encourage those people who are listening, if there's something that you want to do, there are going to be up days and down days. But
I remember when I first went into my first business, and I was only 21, when I went into business. And so I went into my first business, and there were days that I had absolutely nothing to do. I literally went to the beach, or I went to the pool, because
it was hard.
But boy, it sure changed once I got the hang of it, and once things started, progressing. But it's true. And even to this day, I always say, of course, in those days, I telemarketed like crazy, because that is how you got a hold of people. But out of maybe 100 dials, I would reach 30 people, and I would send out 10 or 12 packets of information, and I would get 2 or 3 clients from that. But that was a lot of work doing that. And, it never really gets any easier, because there's always somebody coming up right behind you. But you started out as a direct response copywriter. Now you do marketing and you consulting for your clients. So how do you define marketing?
It's very interesting, because when I'm out there speaking, I do a little demonstration with people where I go up to people and I say, I'd like to show you what marketing means to me. And I'll go up to someone and say, hi, Gail, nice to meet you. Gail, where are you from? Do you live here in Colorado? And I'll start a conversation. And I'll do that 2 or 3 times, and then I'll show some images on the screen of people in communication, in connection, in conversation. And that's how I define marketing. Marketing is about building relationships. It's really about taking the time to develop what we call the KLT factor. You have probably heard of this. It's the know, like, and trust factor. So I tell people, when you go out to an event, whether it's networking online or offline, you're really starting a conversation so that you can build and nurture relationships. And those relationships can lead to strengthening that know, like, and trust. And if you are familiar with Bob Berg and his book, The Go-Giver, he says, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to the people that they know, like, and trust.
That's so true. And, I do know Bob because he started out in my area. And in fact, I did a little bit of editing on his first book. And yeah, he's really gone from being nowhere to being everywhere.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's true. And you wrote a book, Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget, which I think is so ironic because I have a program I do on how to market on a shoestring budget. So Millionaire Marketing.
We should partner up.
Yeah. So did you always dream about being an author, or did you start writing the book because it was a natural outgrowth from what you were doing?
We talked about earlier, did I always dream of having a business? And when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actress. And I got turned down by the High School of Performing Arts. So then I said, okay, I'm going to be a model. And I am 5'2". So what do you think New York advertising agencies
Oh, Debra, this is
said to me?
hysterical. I've got to stop you right there because I'm also 5'2", and my first business was a modeling school, and I developed it into the largest chain in Florida, and we had the largest talent agency. We were SAG-AFTRA, but when I came to Florida and I was modeling, and I modeled up north as well, what I did was I did a lot of convention work, and I did a lot of that kind of thing, because I was good with people, but forget the photography. Any of that.
Well, that's fabulous. I never thought of that as a possibility. I was looking for the print ads.
Yeah.
And I actually did some modeling locally, but like I said, New York modeling agencies went, you're too short. So I tucked those dreams away. And again, I didn't think, okay, I'm going to write a book. And when I started my business as a copywriter, it was funny because many people said, oh, when are you going to write a book? And I went, oh, I'm not going to write a book. That's not on my compass at all. I don't see myself doing that. But what happened was I started pursuing my career as a professional speaker. And you may have heard this. Many people say, you need to write a book. Right. So Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget was a presentation that I'd been doing probably right after 9/11. And that's how I started giving marketing advice, because after 9/11, a lot of my clients were scared. And they said, I'm cutting back. I'm cutting back on my marketing budget. I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to spend any money. And so I started to guide them in cost-effective ways that they could still get their message out there. Because even when things are tough, you need to keep a presence so that you have top-of-mind awareness. Because when things get good again, if you're top of mind, people will remember you and say, oh, you know what? Debra was always there. Gail was always there. Now that things are better, I'm going to go back and call them. So I didn't always dream of becoming an author. It just came out of the fact that I had this presentation, and I had written quite a few, blogs and spoken about different aspects of marketing, that I went, okay, I'm going to do this book. And I actually ran into a colleague of mine who was doing book coaching. And I had helped him get some speaking gigs when I lived in Hawaii. And he said, you helped me with those gigs. Let me help you get that book out of your head and onto paper. Because I thought about the book for about a year and then didn't do anything. But when he started to coach me through it, I wrote the book. So that's
did that topic come automatically? Was that one of your speeches?
Well, it was a presentation that I've been doing, like I said, since 9/11. But what I found was, when I looked at the presentation that I had been doing and I started to put the content down on paper, I think I had 5,000 words. Well, my book is now 260 something pages, and you need a lot more than 5,000 words to fill those pages. So I started to expand my content, do a little bit more research, and I also interviewed many of my colleagues and asked them, what's your cost-effective way to market yourself? What's your tip? And so then I was able not only to share my own experience, but the experience of others like me who had successfully created their own business.
Yeah, it's writing a book is a task in itself, and it's interesting because as a writer, you're always writing, but you wouldn't necessarily think that a book is going to come out of all of this.
Right.
In the book, though, you talk about cost-effective strategies that increase one's visibility and helps businesswomen gain top of mind awareness in the market without breaking the bank. And of course,